Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Why don't we take our seats? We'll kick off our session here this morning. We have the benefit of a nice kind of smaller, intimate group here. In usual mode, though, I notice people sit at the back. It's kind of like being back at school. Nobody wants to sit at the front. Maybe afraid they're going to get called on or passing notes back and forth or whatever it is the kids do. But anyway, I'm pleased to welcome you to our dedicated finished vehicle logistics panel today. This is also one of our live sessions, so we're streaming this to a global audience. We're mainly gonna have a panel discussion here, but we're gonna kick off with some opening remarks from one of our panelists, Gerald from Subaru. But the headline of the panel is Visions of the Future. And basically, you know, we're going to be talking about what does the finished vehicle logistics industry need to do to prepare for the changes ahead? How is it managing today? We had some interesting comments yesterday from Kevin Hogan from EY, who discussed an example of a vehicle processing center and the extremely manual processes, right? The work order on the dash, the runners just moving the car to the nearest spot, not in a kind of optimized way, depending on flow and scheduling and stuff. So I mean, clearly, I'm not saying that's everybody's benchmark. Some are going to be different than that, but this is a segment of the supply chain which has a lot of room for optimization, a lot of room for technology to make impacts. But it also has like inherent constraints and fixed kind of capacity and dedicated assets, which you know, for the time being, this is the network that we have. But I think if you speak to executives in the sector and they look to 2030 or 2025, and you know, do we want to do things? Are we going to get there by doing it the way we do it today? I don't think that's really the consensus. So that's some of the stuff we're going to be mulling about a bit this morning. So we're very pleased to have three car makers here. Bob DeCrick, who's responsible for finished vehicle logistics at Fiat Chrysler Automobile in North America. Jerry Lee, responsible for VP Vehicle Logistics Distribution for Subaru of America. As I was saying before, the Subaru, the sort of little engine that could, no matter what's happening in the US market, seems to be the one that just keeps rising and rising. And very pleased to welcome Chuck Kendig, responsible for vehicle logistics and sales production planning at American Honda. So you know, welcome a local Detroit car maker and some West Coast and East Coast actually bases and stuff. So we're kind of covering the span and chance for some good discussion. So I guess mainly we're going to do Q&A, but we spoke with Jerry before. Jerry's got a couple of remarks he's going to kick us off with. So I'll ask Jerry to kind of start us off, and then look forward to having a wide open discussion.
Good morning, Automotive Logistics Global.
Good morning.
Who stayed out late last night?
All the people who aren't here.
Yeah, evidently it was a good time had by many. Visions of the future. The future can be fuzzy. So let me use a couple examples of the past to illustrate that. My dad was an electrical engineer. When he got out of the Navy, he joined a company that was putting together a training class of junior military officers and newly minted MBAs to sell a new product. The company was IBM, and the product was computers. And as my father says, they thought they could sell 100 nationally. So the future wasn't very clear back then. When I joined Subaru, we had a miracle machine in the copy room. It was 2/3 the size of a refrigerator, and it could transmit a single letter-sized piece of paper to Japan in only 6 minutes. So one night, I had the privilege of feeding that machine 20 pages of paper. So that was a Rapifax machine. I guess that's where they got the fax. So not sure whether IBM or Rapifax had a very clear vision of the future, probably because it was a little fuzzy to them. Subaru of America is going to be 50 years old in February. I've had the privilege of working for 72% of its history and over 90% of its vehicle sales in the US. My first 14 years were spent in the financial side of the business until one day the senior VP of sales asked me a question. Fred was from North Carolina, so I'll do a Fred. Jerry, do you want to just keep score, or do you want to get in the game? Interesting question to a CPA, MBA who worked very hard for those credentials. I did not see that change coming, but I told Fred, put me in, coach. So for the last 22 years, I've been the director and vice president of sales operations, which includes vehicle planning and logistics, distribution, and sales planning and analysis, all otherwise known as Subaru's vehicle supply chain from order to delivery. From 1995 to 2007, the supply chain supported vehicle sales which bounced around from 140,000 to 200,000 sales a year. No big deal. In 2008, Subaru was the only brand in the United States that had year-over-year sales growth. That year, the big three were down 50% from prior year, and the Asians were down 30%. The automotive industry was in a depression, and no one saw that coming. Subaru just happened to be the smart kid in the dumb class. Remember when the big three executives were forced to drive to Washington because using jets was just atrocious? So in the first half of 2009, after that Lehman shock year of 2008, we were cutting production at the factory in Indiana. Then came cash for clunkers in July and August of 2009. No one saw that coming. So the production cuts became production increases with overtime production and line speed increases. During the last 9 years, Subaru sales have increased from 187,000 in 2008 to 650,000 plus in 2017. In 2008, we may have had a hope of a 250 to 300,000 sales year someday, but certainly no plan for a 600,000 sales year. The vision of Subaru's future became a step-by-step, day-by-day, year-by-year exercise of increasing production in both the United States and Japan, adding ports to the East Coast and the West Coast, expanding our motor pool infrastructure at our factory in Lafayette, Indiana, adding railheads which shortened haul-away distances, adding 4 people to my sales operations department at corporate, and IT projects, which improved our vehicle purchase orders, monthly allocation to dealers, daily scheduling for port processing, ETA delivery dates, and so on. Throughout the last 9 years, marginal improvements to processes, procedures, and IT systems have generated a cumulative benefit. IT scalability is the real factor supporting annual sales increases from 187,000 in 2008 to 216 to 263, 267 in the earthquake tsunami year of 2012, 336, 425, 518, 583, 615 last year, and 650 plus this year. The future may be fuzzy, but we met the challenges and dealt with it. We dealt with the high-grade problem of more demand than supply. That is a terrific problem. Much better than searching for parking lots to cover with excess production. We dealt with that in the early 90s. That is a low-grade problem. So where is Subaru today? By Polk registration data, That's retail registration, excluding fleet sales. Subaru is the number 7 automotive brand in the United States. We are behind Ford, Chevy, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, and Jeep. By individual sales territory or zone, our brand rankings range from number 3 to number 17. So a very broad range, which means we have plenty of opportunities for improvement and sales increases. Subaru's had high customer loyalty numbers for a very long time. We just didn't have enough customers. Each year, before the NADA convention, J.D. Power Associates has a meeting for OEMs and dealers. For half of that meeting, they do a forced march of franchise assessments for all automotive brands in the United States. During the past review of 2016 for Subaru, J.D. Power measures our loyalty at 60% of 300,000 trade-ins. So that would equal 180,000 sales. We sold 615,000 sales. They don't have a way of calculating commercial fleet or rental fleet or internal sales. So they say we had conquest sales of about 400,000. They take a look at that conquest to defector ratio. So in our case, 400,000 versus 120,000 defectors on those trade-ins, or a 3.3 ratio. No other brand has a conquest ratio in the industry like that. There may be one that has a 2, everybody else, it begins with a 1. So what do we know about conquest customers? I know 2 things. They weren't loyal to their last brand, and they have a recent frame of reference to compare Subaru to. So the old-time Subaru customers that have been buying us for 20 or 30 years, they don't have that frame of reference. So the challenges we face now is an ever-increasing UIO count, which puts the pressure on the dealer sales, service operations and parts operations, ours also, and the customer relations department. So the future to me is, if I was having a conversation with a bright young man, which I tried to do, I said, I think it's time to go into parts and service. I think sales and marketing can take care of itself for the next few years. He thought I was crazy. So a couple of the questions that we were supposed to look at, is the industry ready for the future? Sure we are. We have special purpose trucks, special purpose rail cars, special purpose vessels. Why would we not be ready? You know, we've faced problems in the past. Everybody has, but I think we're pretty resilient and get the job done. What technology do we need and why? IT. Telematics, we've used pinging in rare occasions, much less than I thought we would. But when we really can't find a car, the telematics is a wonderful deal. BI reports, business intelligence reports, everybody uses, but I think some data manipulator like Click is probably going to supersede BI very shortly. Some of the discussion about the technology companies that we had yesterday, I was thinking about, Uber was mentioned more than a few times. Maybe automotive logistics can go to a Uber demand model where if you want to ship a car in the last week of the month, it's like trying to get an Uber coming out of a crowded concert. But if you want to ship a car in the first week of a month, you get the benefit. Think about it. The interesting question was, how are we preparing for the exciting and unpredictable future? I don't know about my counterparts, but I recently bought a 1956 Martin Committee trumpet, similar to the horn played by Miles Davis. And that is my preparation for an exciting and unpredictable future. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. I think that was a great way to kind of kick us off, looking at some of the fuzzy things that we saw for the future or didn't see, and how you kind of deal with them. And I look forward to hearing you play that trumpet at the next conference.
In New Orleans?
Yeah, we're going to move it to New Orleans, exactly. So I think what we would like to do now is mainly keep this as an open discussion. We can pick up on some of the points that Jerry raised, and obviously we hope to get you all involved. I think one of the things that I wanted to maybe start off with, and Jerry alluded to a bit there, obviously indicating that it was important for the service side to kind of maintain those customers and things. But this came out a little bit last session. I mean, when we think about finished vehicle logistics now and in the future, is it really customer focused enough? And by that I probably mean the end customer in some way. I mean, we have these dedicated networks, and I mean, it's built on perhaps a bit of a wholesale model and things. But in the end, I mean, when we talk about the visibility that's there, what we can provide to the customer on time and things, it's a general broad question, but is it customer focused enough? Should we change? When we talk about that Amazon effect and it coming into play over even more in the next couple of years, how will we need to get there? Maybe we can start with you, Chuck.
Yeah, I think the answer is no. I think we focus an awful lot on quality, so to make sure customer has a perfect car, dealer gets a perfect car, from the factory. We focus a lot on timeliness, so we make commitments to a time frame, and we're at 80-85% on-time delivery, even with all the things that can happen in the supply chain. So we think that's good. But I think the reality is, as many people talked about today and yesterday, is the big change, and many big impactors on the industry, but probably the biggest is not the industry, it's the customer expectation from what they get on their iPhone and their Uber, their pizza, whatever, Amazon. We struggle because there's big conflicts. Certainly a customer, and I get this from my dealers all the time, and probably you guys do too. Why is it I can order something on Amazon, or I can order a pizza, and I can see exactly where that is all the way through, and yet I order a $50,000 car, and you give me a 3-day window when it's going to get here, and it's kind of blind for the customer. So that's big discrepancy between a person's experience at home, as one of the presenters this morning said, and what we provide. So I think, yeah, absolutely, we need to be much more customer focused. The problem or the conflict is, at least for me, I'm trying to understand, especially in a situation where every car is sold, where is the ROI, right? So and I asked IBM and Oracle, I met with them at a conference in Marina Del Rey a couple months ago. They asked me what my problems were. So one of the big is visibility to the supply chain. So I'd like to be able to have a Uber-like experience for the customer and for the dealer. I said, but the problem is it can't cost more than $100,000 to do, because there's no ROI in it. There's almost no ROI. There's certainly great soft side to it. But ultimately, to build a system like that, we got to be very, very smart and nimble, because to put a lot of expense into that is going to end up at the sticker price, and there's huge downward pressure on pricing in the market, especially as we go to electrification, where those are less and less profitable type vehicles, right, that we're building. So anyway, long answer to a short question. I think we need to be much more customer-centric, for sure.
Bob?
Sure. Well, there's always more to do. I think on the quality side, we collectively do a good job of delivering cars to dealers, in good condition. Our damage metrics are very good. The transit time has always been a challenge, whether to a dealer or to the customer, and it's the variability in that time that's frustrating, because the technology is there. We track things pretty closely, but it's what do you give the customer as far as an ETA? Do you set their expectations too aggressively, and if so, they're going to get ticked off if you're a few days late, or do you get real conservative and go the other extreme? So I think addressing variability is always going to be a challenge on that. And it depends, again, on if it's a retail customer or dealer, they tend to have sometimes different expectations.
Yeah. Jerry, and Subaru tends to have more of a, I'm not sure if it's quite a build to order, but there is quite a customer tied there, and I think in terms of the precision ETA, it's been a big focus for you guys, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah.
So we give a date of delivery when we schedule a car. So that can be a week out or 15 days, 20 days out, depending on the location. We also have a second ETA that is updated at each stage. So sometimes some dealers hate seeing it jump around, so they can just look at the original date, or they, a lot of times it'll go forwards and backwards and still land on the original date. So we've gone back and forth on that. Some people think week of is better than a day of. I prefer the day as a target and a goal. For our sold order customers, we have started to communicate to both the dealer and the customer. And that was a little tricky because the dealers don't like the manufacturer communicating directly with the customer.
Yeah.
But we have had virtually no blowback when we started that. The customer's calling the dealership, so they may be a little bit relieved that we're taking that question from them and providing a status. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I get the Amazon question all the time.
Yeah.
I am not an Amazon Prime, so I'll order something and they try to intimidate me. So they say, well, it'll show up in 12 days. It shows up in 2 days. So how accurate is that 12-day ETA?
It's true, we do always use the Amazon example like it's always so perfect. I mean, I always sort of say, okay, I want to sign for it. They just give it to somebody who kind of comes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe they should try that with a car, Won't be so happy with that. Thank you for those answers there, because it's a bit of a start. Anyone want to kind of jump in further this point? Yeah, we got a mic right up in front here, please.
Might be able to hear me from where I'm at. I've talked
But we'll get the mic because then it gets on the live stream that way. Thanks.
My name is Mike Burrell. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. They are building a Carvana vending machine in our town that will robotically deliver a car to a buyer who may have purchased online. Carvana also delivers a vehicle one at a time with a specialized vehicle. We've been talking a lot about Amazon, but I've been waiting to hear someone talk about Carvana. Have you all taken a look at their model? I know they're in the used market, but I can see them getting into new vehicles in the future.
So specifically about Carvana, or maybe indeed any other kind of alternative models which are started coming out there. Do you guys look at that and see or apply in your model?
In my position, I do not, but I think it's key for our company as a whole to always look at those ideas and adopt them where it's practical. It's a never-ending, changing market.
I've heard of Carvana. I'm not familiar with them. Yeah, so I suspect what they do is they're like Amazon. They offer premium delivery. So they can tell you when it's going to be there because they're paying a trucker $1,200 to get it there. That would not work for the OEMs.
Or you can go to the vending machine that's open 24 hours a day.
Okay. If you really need wheels.
When you have a craving for 3 a.m. Subaru,
Is there a beer vending machine next to that?
Honda's doing much more looking at the zip car type models. We think people are going to consume their vehicles differently if they even do buy them, right? In certain markets, there's less buying. In certain demographics, the younger set, if you're living in Manhattan, it's ridiculous. Someone mentioned that today. It's ridiculous to own a car, so you use a car sharing service. We're committed to the franchise dealer model in the United States. We don't have the luxury of a Tesla or something like this coming in and doing a complete vertical. Although that model, as he busts through the franchise network, ceiling, probably leaves the rest of us open for something like that in the future. But specifically what you're talking about, we do have dealers, so we're encouraging our dealers to adopt this kind of model. We want to sell our cars through our dealers primarily. We have a dealer in New York he's talked about and created, it's Paragon Honda, Paragon Acura. He has Paragon Direct. So we don't have franchise dealers in Manhattan anymore. This guy is in Queens. He does a tremendous job. He will deliver a car on a flatbed to a customer, just like you're talking about, through an app. He'll pick your car up at night, service it, over across the river and have it back to you before you go to work in the morning. So it's, instead of thinking about, like I imagine this Carvana is, instead of thinking about having 1,500 franchise dealers, it's you have every single rooftop as a potential, outlet for your products and your services. So it's the whole Amazon bringing the product to the customer versus Google, which, I Google, then I got to go to the storefront myself. So it is kind of the Amazon model. Let's bring the product and the service to the customer, make a kind of a frictionless transaction. And when you do that, what this dealer is finding in a very competitive market is price becomes back of mind, not front of mind anymore, because you're getting this premium service, and we're all time starved, so getting time back is important, especially urbanites in Manhattan. So anyway, long answer to a short question, but we're looking to do that through our retailers at this point.
I mean, it is interesting. That kind of gives an implication that vehicle delivery can be a strategic, it can be a competitive factor in a premium service even that the customer might be willing to pay for, or pay more for, I should suppose. But I mean, in general, my impression is that that's not usually the point of view that you build your networks around, that you're delivering a premium service that defines one to the other. Although we know the customer, will walk off a lot if his car isn't there in some cases and go to somebody else. So I mean, is there opportunity for the OEM to change that thinking for some segments and some innovation in that way? Or do you just really see it more as something at the dealer level or third party?
I don't think dealers would want to pay for it. And you can do it with used cars, but I think the new dealer lobby in each state is fairly strong, and would be look at the workout they gave Tesla in some states.
To me, it's always going to be a balance of time and cost, and addressing the majority of the dealers versus maybe a few that want a special service.
Yeah. Okay, cool. We'll start. Actually, we'll start here, and then we'll go to Sharvin.
Hi, I'm Bill. First of all, finished vehicle logistics is very demanding and difficult. Congratulations, you guys do great work. It's pretty well known. But you're always going to be compared to other models, right? Whether it's Amazon or whoever it might be. One of the models that's being adopted as an example by FedEx and UPS is shared resource modeling, right? So they don't look at independent companies anymore. During Christmas, they use United Parcel Service, uses the post office, and they all look at coming together and using all the independent resources as a single entity. Have you ever come around a table and had a discussion about maybe that model working, where you all are one single entity sharing a single resource rather than competing for it?
You mean as OEs?
Yes.
Sharing. It's funny, I was having a discussion in Andiamo yesterday with someone from a brand in this local market that begins with F, and I'm having a discussion in a couple of weeks I
didn't know Faraday was actually
in a place called Plano about just this exact thing, right? And I don't think as an industry, we haven't. Maybe you guys are aware. I don't know, but we're thinking the next big savings or innovation efficiency is, instead of us competing against, asking different haulaway providers, different processing providers, different railroads, different ocean carriers for special schedules for us. How about we've got a plant 11 miles to our east? Why don't we combine, the resource, and we're all going to the top 20 markets in the U.S. generally. Maybe we have different rail carriers, in the north, but it's something that we're beginning to think about. I think that is the next big efficiency, and it's especially important in Mexico, right, where we trying to get the frequency of ship calls and quick rides out of the country to avoid vandalism is really important. But I think it applies everywhere.
I mean, the fact that we already use a shared asset network is good when you look at it today. I mean, the haulaway carriers we use are used by a lot of the other OEMs. They co-load, railroads in some cases co-load, so we already do a fairly good job of utilizing joint assets versus kind of having our own pools of assets. We've tried in the past with other OEMs to kind of jointly look for opportunities in terms of empty miles and so forth, and we've had some successes, but it's difficult to align everybody's interest and make it a win-win. It's something you continue to try to do.
Yeah, if we're doing a good job scheduling, we should be making good shippable loads at the railheads. So it's full of Subarus, but they're free to co-load if they need to. I want the truckers to be profitable, so I don't expect them to make a milk run to 8 or 9 dealers to fill out a load.
A question from Sharman. You still have a question there? Yeah.
So I went back to turning it around to like an Amazon model where you can track a vehicle, possibly like a pizza delivery. We work with one particular manufacturer, and you can all probably guess who, that they always know where their car is. So they never have to ask us, when's my car coming, where's my car? If there was tracking system, maybe similar to an RFID, it would have to be different than an RFID because it would have to be an actual tracking system that the end user could turn off at the end if they didn't want it on their car. You could just turn that model around, you know, the manufacturer knows where the car is at all times, this particular, just turn it around for the client to see and just be completely transparent. Something like that. Have you thought in those terms? Putting a tracker on the actual vehicle, and then the client can turn it off at the end if they don't want to feel like they're being tracked.
I mean,
Just a thought.
I mean, currently our vehicle locations are signaled for the most part via EDI transmissions, and we track and trace, allowing again the customer to see that at some point has some pros and cons. So, you know, we use the data internally. Ultimately, though, with a connected vehicle, you can expand that, get rid of EDI, and have a lot more visibility. Again, if you want that customer to, is there a net benefit? There's some downside and there's some upside.
Yeah, our IT department got very excited showing me a map of the vehicle location across the country with a rail car from pinging, but the railroad can provide the same data. And you know, if you were to show that to the customer, which is the dealer, if the rail car was at a siding for 2 days, you're sure to get a phone call. And you know, it might be in that siding by design, and we don't know that, but the railroad does, and we're still going to hit the ETA. So I told them, don't show the map.
Like you're going to get that call anyway. So I was on the retail side for a long time. You know, I feel like, you know, our customers, well, when I was in that industry, come to us and then we go to you, and it's a constant asking. So either way, you're going, you know, you're giving these updates constantly. I would rather, in that position, know than not know. You know, and at least, even if it's bad news, I'd rather know the news. You know, so I don't know. It's interesting because you're going to get, you know, 50 phone calls on a sold order on the 29th of the month.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the scary part. So I'm not sure if the brand you're talking about begins with a T or not, but I know when they first started that, it was a huge issue, right? Because they exposed too much information and had the issues you're talking about. And I think the scary thing for us, and to answer your question, as more and more of our cars are connected and have telematics, we'll be able to do what you're talking about. Then the question is, we have to be able to support the kind of questions we're getting. Maybe I think we're still grappling, at least in my area, grappling with how do you put an ROI on that extra overhead that you're creating all of a sudden to answer all these calls, which is something we need to grapple with. Because if that's what the customer wants, and us putting our head in the sand saying it doesn't make sense to provide it because we can't monetize it, probably not a good way to look at, right? Probably not a good way to get the new customers in. So we have to grapple with how do we either monetize it or how do we just swallow that cost of supporting that kind of visibility, which people truly want. It's clear they want that.
I suppose you don't know what you potentially lose by not doing this, right? So there's that risk. I think there's a question here by a company that ends with iota.
Good morning. And Jerry, thanks for the opening. Great story at the beginning. Really like traveling there with you. My name's Ed Wante. I'm from Toyota Motors North America, the other T company in Plano, Texas now. And I did want to ask the question. I'm going to get away from the tracking and some of the logistics and kind of maybe look at more flexibility. More and more today, our vehicle customers are looking for more accessorization. So accessories play a really important part of our business. One, it really helps our customers change the look and feel of their vehicle. Two, it helps our vehicles look like different cars during about the mid-cycle. And then three, it helps our profitability quite a bit. So it's a win-win. My question to you is, we need to offer flexibility into the last minute that the customers and dealers want to decide on the accessorization options, but yet still meet that lead time and get it to them as soon as possible. My question to all three of my counterparts is, what are you doing to balance inline installation of accessories, port-installed accessories, and dealer-installed accessories in your companies? Thank you.
Well, for us, there's always the cost-benefit analysis of doing something in the factory. What is it in terms of complexity and added costs? Over time, there's been an ebb and flow of what's done in the factory and what's done out. But we rely on upfitters quite a bit to do accessorization, and some of our vehicles, Jeeps as an example, are highly accessorized. And that's a model that works for us. We get it built out of the plant quickly, get it to an upfitter, and move it on to the final customer.
The average life cycle of an accessory goes from introductory at fairly low penetration to a medium to high penetration, where it gets the factory attention and then goes inside the factory, and we wait for the next accessory to be developed. We do a fairly large accessory program on all of our vehicles, and that was necessary because as such a small brand, our dealers didn't have enough techs to do in-dealership installs. It was a waste of their time. They should have been doing higher value work. So we still have an active accessory program at all of our ports and the motor pool at the factory. The value of those accessories, I think, has diminished somewhat over the last 20 years. The parts people disagree with me. But if it's high enough penetration, it gets the factory's attention. So we don't have to even ask them whether they're interested. They are.
And they don't like it.
Yes.
They don't like it. We're probably the last holdouts. We don't do any accessorization. If we do a special edition in the factory, but we don't do anything between the factory and the dealer. So we've always told our dealer network, we want you to make the money. We want you to have the labor and the fixed operating profit as a result. I came up through parts, service, sales, a bunch of different areas, and I see the huge potential that is there for both profitability for us and the dealer, and also, like you say, have a more of a customization all the way through the system. So I'm dying to pilot something. I mean, our original reasons for not doing it were we wanted to keep the money at the dealership. And then the secondary reason was we felt like introducing something to the car might create an IQS problem, a quality problem. Well, when you leave accessorization at the dealers, and are there any dealers in here? There probably are. You end up with fairly low penetration rates. Regionally, it can be high. You can have a rock star dealer who's doing great on a certain thing, but generally you have quite low penetration rates because the F&I guy has other things to sell that have a lot bigger profit in them than the accessory. So you end up with low penetration rates, and as a result, your cost per unit is quite high. So your amortization of the tooling is quite expensive. So it's a vicious circle. You never really get good penetration. Then the quality piece, I mean, I visit ports and I see unbelievable processing capabilities. People replacing engines and doing accessories is nothing to them. So I don't think there's really a quality issue out there at all. You have great providers who can literally rebuild the car for you. So we're dying to pilot some of that, and I think the economics are actually quite good. I mean, it's going to be less expensive than in the factory, much less expensive than at the dealership. And even if I pay the dealer, if we put it on a port and I pay him a certain amount of profit, if he's making $20 on an accessory, but he's making it 100 times a month versus $100 one time a month, he's going to come out ahead. So.
I wonder if I can actually. Oh, sorry, go on.
The quality is a big deal at the port. So I think that's the real benefit. The downside of that is the car arrives at the dealership customized. So if a customer really doesn't like something that's installed, it becomes a negotiating piece. But as the accessories declined maybe 15 years ago, we took that available labor and took the pre-delivery inspection out of the dealerships and did that at the ports also. So we have a uniform inspection of all the vehicles and expected to rocket up the IQS, and did not. But at least we knew it was done properly instead of by Skippy the lot boy.
So overall, if you think the accessory, you think the accessory value has come down. I mean, that despite being the opportunity to, I don't know, put new technology, maybe that comes first, the accessories, as you say, it'll go quickly into the plant. But you just think that goes quicker into the plant than it used to, or? Well,
so some of the items with audio or wheels or leather interior became factory items. Right. The natural follow-up to that would have been the entertainment systems or navigation systems, and that stayed with the factory, so we never had an opportunity for that.
I see. I wonder if I could follow up to you, Ed, actually quickly, just because I know your service parts and accessories, and I think in the next session we'll talk a bit about what you guys are doing on that side. But for accessory delivery, because I think, is that part of your responsibility, accessory delivery to Toyota Logistics Services terminals and ports? So I mean, you've had such a big focus with same-day delivery across a lot of your network and a lot, frequent ordering. Is that transition also happened for the accessory business for TLS?
It actually has. A great question. Thank you. I think that we have to maximize everything we have. I believe that as OEMs, our customers are used to having a lot of choices in other fields. So, I was just looking at like tennis shoes, how many different colors, and I believe at one of the last automotive session conferences I went to, tires will begin to come in different colors, no longer just black. People will be able to choose tires in different colors. So there's a lot of customization happening. So at Toyota Motors North America, our accessory engineers are doing a great job. If anything, the only complaint I have about our accessories is the installation rates are 20%, and then we end up having to supply to 50, 60%. So you can imagine the supplier capacity becomes an issue. With that said, we are trying to find the balance, what makes sense in line. And what we mean by that is what becomes factory standard first. So a lot of our Toyota Racing Development TRD packages, you can pretty much bet they're inline. And then we have other ones that are inline or sideline to ensure the quality is there. It does take care of the quality issue, and it also eliminates waste, because a lot of the port disassembly creates a lot of waste of materials that were actually put on inside. So how do we eliminate waste and be more environmentally conscious in the process? The third is maximizing what our port operations can do in an efficient manner, meaning what's throw-in capability, what can add still to the dealer profitability, do a sharing with them by incentivizing it. And we have a lot of incentives on port installed options. And then third, we have the fourth, we have the dealer installed options. And with the dealer installed options, we do offer 15 hours. We're targeting to get our customers at 15-hour order to arrival. And that includes accessories. So we're at about 79% of our total customers who get order to arrival in 15 hours. And we try to make sure that includes accessories. We also provide for about 70% of the units in operation. For service parts, we provide what's called same-day service. So in addition to their nighttime and attended delivery, they also have same-day service. And what we've done is we've asked that they order accessories for that customer who's in the sales department who wants the cargo net because it didn't come with a cargo net from the port. We don't want them waiting till tomorrow, so what we do is we have them order by 10 for arrivals by 1 o'clock as well. And what we're trying to do is really just grow the customization portion of it, trying to show our customers that the automotive business itself is pretty flexible and offers a wide portfolio, and it just makes good sense for the business. Our accessory business is growing faster than what we planned. Wow. And like I said, I think using everything from manufacturing to port to dealer to same-day service logistics and other service providers is going to be the way of the future. So thanks for the question.
No, thanks for that. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity there. As Chuck, someone who come from the parts business and now looking at the difference, as you indicated, that Honda is the last holdout there. So interesting.
Yeah.
Accessories will replace the crash parts when cars refuse to hit each other. So you're going to be more important.
Do we have any other? Oh, yeah, we have a question right there, Andrea.
Good morning, Andrea Amico from Jack Cooper. I would like to go back to the topic about data visibility. And earlier there was a speaker from Ogilvy saying we should think about consumer experience first. And reality is that our industry is B to B to B to C, maybe. So we're 4 degrees removed. And so really 2 questions. One is, how do you think about consumer experience and how this influences the culture and the decisions that are made for OEMs? And the second one, I just invite you to think about, if we talk all the time about Amazon and saying, hey, they provide great visibility and they're great, and then at the same time we say, well, we really don't want to tell people because otherwise they're going to pick up the phone. I get those phone calls all the time from dealers asking where the cars are. So those phone calls are happening. We just happen to field in them, and now we need to figure out where it is. It may not be in our yard. We need to move upstream, right? Is it in the rail? Is it at the port? Is it the plant? Wherever it is. And I think it would be great to remove the shackles, and I don't want the cost to stop you. If you're interested in publishing the information, I'm gonna, oh shoot, this is public, right? I'm willing to do it for free, so just let me know if you're interested. Sign me up. I'm gonna do it for free. Thank you.
Price is right.
Again, the customer experience from my perspective and my job is getting the vehicles there on time and good quality at a reasonable cost. The issue of what you show the customer in terms of data and ETAs, as we said earlier, it's a trade-off. If you give him or her data that's misleading, you're going to get a disappointed customer. So I think it's something we need to continue to look at because customers' requirements will change. But again, most of our customers buy it from dealer stock, so they're not necessarily interested in the whole flow. It's a small percentage that order one from the factory.
Yeah, I think your point is spot on, and like we were talking a little bit earlier, we're in the same position. It's not the 4-door 4-cylinder Accord, but it's usually the hot early adopter car that someone's looking for, the dealer's looking for, the client who put a deposit on it is looking for it. And I think the brand experience is significantly deteriorated when that customer calls in and the dealer told him or her it would be here Wednesday and it's Thursday and it's not here and I don't know where it is. So yeah, I think you're spot on. We've got to figure that out and put a lot more focus in that area.
And if Andrea is willing to answer calls for free, I'd like to, anyone who has complaints about this conference, I'd like to direct you to Mr. Amico.
That's quite
Does Mike Griggs agree with that? Okay.
Yeah. I think I see, sorry, I had a bit of lights blinding me, but I believe we have a question right here in the middle we'll take. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Matt with NORAD. First of all, Chuck, let's start that pilot program because we could help you with that. But who do you guys consider the customer? I hear it going back and forth. Is it the end customer or is it often the dealer? Because I do see, I've never ordered a car. I've always gotten it off the lot. So if we take that a little bit further, if you go and you see it and then you wanted to add to it, you do the accessories there, or you could do them in the port, and you're that much closer, right? So you're at the railhead or you're at the port, and you can finalize what they want, and it'd be there the next day if you had the kind of stock in the yards. Is that something that you consider, or you just rather go from the stock?
Well, on a sold order basis, the customer's accessorizing their vehicle. And there's some cars that have nothing on them, and some cars have everything on them. So the average of the accessorization on sold order is actually fairly similar to the accessories installed on a stock unit. And I think I said this a couple of years ago. When we had a huge volume of sold orders, when our inventory was absurdly low, I was worried about the customer experience. So I got market research to send out a survey to the sold order customers. And 10 questions, but the money questions were, would you recommend the sold order system to family or friends for their next vehicle purchase? And would you use the sold order system for your next purchase? And we had no idea what the results would be. It was a yes or no answer. It wasn't a scale of 1 to 10. And it came back 90% yes. And these people were waiting 25 to 60 days, some of them more, for a car. So how can they say that they would use that experience on their next car? And I think the answer, we don't know the answer, so I made one up. I think the answer is, of the 800 end items of model, color, option, spec, this customer is making 72 car payments on their first choice of all those cars. So whenever they're at a traffic light and they see a Subaru of the same model, the different color, they're not disappointed that they didn't wait for that color that they really wanted. They're driving their first choice. And I heard that's what happens in Europe. Everybody takes great pride in Audi's building a car for me, BMW's building a car for me. It'll be ready in 3 months. So we encouraged sold orders, but only after the dealers exhausted all opportunities to do a trade. But over the last many years, our inventory was probably 30 days or less. We have better inventory availability now, and the sold orders have dropped off.
Any other questions at this time? The nice lady, the young lady, would have to ask another question, please. Sharman, Gavin, there.
So back to the subject and what we were talking about. Sorry, not to beat a dead horse, but as a dealer, so say it's just a Honda Accord and it's 10 days before the end of the month, and there's no red one on the lot, just a basic car, not a hot car or anything like that, and just this particular customer wants one, and they both say an ETA of 30th/1, and you don't know which day it's going to fall on, right? So if you had the accessibility to see, you can look at maybe 2 VINs and know which one to sell, because maybe one of them has already left the yard, or one of them is already 1 step ahead, but they, rather than just looking at a general time frame. So I think there's a lot of benefits in the visibility, because you're going to get the phone calls anyway. And I think in the beginning, the dealers you'd probably get a lot, because they'd be like, why is this car stuck for 2 days here? But then I think over time, they would learn how it works, and they'd go, oh, I've seen that before, don't worry about it, and so I think it, as a whole, and not to beat a dead horse, but I think the visibility would really be beneficial.
Well, the dealers can look at their pipeline report and promote a stock order to sold order status. So depending on where it is in the chain, it can be prioritized for delivery ahead of other stock units.
In the red Accord example, so a Honda dealer can, so I don't want you to think they don't have visibility. They have visibility. It may not be as great as we'd like it, but certainly the dealer can see where that VIN is in the pipeline, if it's in Chicago still, or if it's reached San Bernardino. If let's say it's a West Coast dealer, he knows in San Bernardino it's less than 2 days away from him on the haul away. So yeah, he or she could prioritize, just as you say, with the current data they've got. But
right, and when I was the new car manager at a Lexus store, that kind of worked because we could do that, but at the same time, sometime the system would say it's here, but then when we made a call, oh no, it's already left there. We just haven't updated the data or whatever. So. And dealers are not very patient.
I haven't noticed that.
Yeah. We have great dealers.
Thank you for the points there. I think you know, I don't know, like when I take an Uber, it drives me crazy sometimes when I see him and he stops and says, what the hell is he doing? Is he driving around the block? What is this? I'm going to cancel it. But, you know, you realize, okay, sometimes the system is just catching up, or you don't. I agree that sometimes the visibility can probably be extreme, but I think Sherman makes a very good point that I mean, first of all, I guess we shouldn't assume that the dealer won't do something good with that visibility, you know, in terms of their own customer service and relations and what they can do with it, and indeed what they might learn and understand about the some of the inherent bottlenecks and, you know, weird things that happen in the automotive supply chain.
Yeah. We too also allow dealers visibility
Yeah.
to the status and ETA. It's just that the ultimate customer does not have visibility.
Right. I wanted to bring, again, I think I referenced this in my opening remarks, what a gentleman from EY spoke about yesterday on a yard. You know, everything was a processing center, and then this sort of, you know, printed work orders. The runners just sort of parking the car in the nearest spot, not in relation to, you know, the next sort of workflow or what the loads might be. And I mean, and I know Honda's is different a bit because of the, you know, there is no accessorization, so it's just basically move them out as fast as possible. But you know, have you used new systems in your yards? Are you optimizing them based on the workflow? I mean, have you automated more of those sort of processes? Maybe we can talk a bit about that.
From our perspective, we rely on our service providers, our port processors, to manage the yard in the best way they can with their technology. I would say, though, over time, with the autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles, there's a lot of potential to leverage that and make the yards even more efficient versus what they are now.
Yeah.
We've done some work in the factory motor pool for, especially in Truckaway, to try to park cars by location, delivery location.
Yeah.
So we've got decent yard management. We also rely on our service providers for that. We try to optimize so the car doesn't, you know, it goes to first point of rest, gets an inspection. It goes to rail loading or truck loading if it's within like 300 miles of the factory. So pretty darn efficient. We're still having it scanned, so it's not just right. Yeah. It's not easy out the gate yet. We're still scanning that. The trucker still has to provide paperwork at the gate on the way out. Although we're getting some automation in those areas. We're working with all the different rail providers at the destination to geobay. That's kind of blocking and tackling, but believe it or not, we still don't have geobaying some areas. So those kind of blocking and tackling things we're working through, and we're looking and hoping when we get. We haven't set on a solution, but we do see a paperless. We see a point in time not too distant where we don't have to stop and scan, where the car's getting scanned as it goes by, or some other technology is handling that for us. The car knows where it needs to go. And
I was going to say the car itself could display the work order or communicate that. But Jerry, you sort of indicated that, and we spoke a couple of years about the potential telematics, and you seem somewhat less. Based on what you said earlier, a little bit maybe less optimistic, or that seeing the value in that. So I mean, where do you see that developing, or is it just at this time it's not particularly useful, or you know, in future when we get this megahertz kind of frequency sorted and other things, you know, should it replace scanning and replace all that kind of processes?
I think in enough time the car will let you know where it is at every second.
Yeah.
But it became more of an IT issue. I think there was sensitivity about the privacy. So was this, if we had the capability of pinging a car in the motor pool, can they turn that off when it's outgated?
Right.
So when the car arrives and it's driven by a customer, someone at the port isn't tracking that customer.
Right.
So it seemed like a bad idea, but
What about if FCA, for example, are you guys looking more at using telematics?
We are. We're piloting a few instances to try it out. Right now, not all of our vehicles are capable of sending the right information, but over time they will be. So we're trying the process and determining what, trying to develop a business case. I think over time it just makes sense because you can get the data real time, automatically. You can eliminate a lot of the EDI that flows back and forth and then simplify the process.
Yeah.
But there's things to prove out, addressing privacy concerns and so forth. But I think the technology will definitely be there in all the vehicles at some point in time.
Anything to add or similar, same? So.
Yeah, we see it the same way, I think. I think at some point, it'll be great in the whole distribution chain. A car that needs a bump in the charging or we understand that the left front tire is a little low.
Right.
It's going to be there. I don't think it's going to be all that far off.
Yeah. I think we have a question out in the audience there.
I'm going to change topics, so don't worry. Yesterday I was speaking, and one of the topics was cybersecurity. And I think it's a major threat. I quite don't see it as a discourse. This was the first time we spoke about it here. Just in the last month and a half, I think 2 plants have been shut down, and it's public notice, right? One from Honda, one from Toyota. So malware is making its way on the production environment, and at the same time, there's a growing risk on people not attacking the assets per se, so the cars and hacking the cars. So I wanted to know what kind of discussions are being had at the OEMs on this topic? How are you guys thinking about securing the supply chain? There's a great white paper from IBM that just came out that talks about securing the supply chain and specifically securing the vehicles from the moment in which it leaves the factory to it reaches the hands of the consumer. Because clearly these will eventually lead to rethinking about what drives value in the supply chain. So I just wanted to know how you guys are thinking about that. Thank you.
I'm, reading the papers and looking at all the data out there that cybersecurity is a concern and a risk as far as specific actions taken by our company. There's a lot of talented people that are around to address that. I can't share any details because I'm not aware of the details.
yeah,
But it's a serious issue.
me too. You're way ahead of me on that issue. Good job, though.
Yeah, we've got a North American organization that looks deeply into that. I could tell you something about it, but I'd have to kill you, so I can't talk about it. And yeah.
I think the truth is, if Andrea really wants to know, he probably already has hacked in, and he probably already knows
right,
himself.
he's probably already
in. He's just testing your own knowledge there. Any other questions from the audience? Oh, right in the back.
Mike Papia. The technology to ping a car, it dates back to Katrina, one of the manufacturers that's not sitting up there that I retired from. We used that technology. We could ping every car. We actually did a geo map of New Orleans underwater to help the rescue effort. We also thought we proved that we could track vehicles during the whole logistics process. The issue was privacy. And the manufacturer turned off that piece of the puzzle because of privacy.
Makes sense.
Yeah, sort of follows up, as said, yeah. Anyone else got questions? Thank you for the insight. I mean, like I said, it's useful, interesting to know that.
Big deal.
Maybe changing track sort of slightly as we move towards the finish. I mean, What are some of the more immediate changes that you may be looking at in the sort of near to medium term? Whether it's in your network. I mean, there's been some changes. I mean, Subaru's got more production in the U.S. now, for example. So I don't know if that's changed your network. FCA has moved some production of Jeep into Mexico. So there's different flows. I mean, those are some things that have happened. But what do you see kind of impacting, changing, shifting in your network that maybe your logistics providers should be thinking about, preparing for, helping you to do and transition?
From my perspective, I see the overall network is fairly stable, and I think will be in the future. Some of the trends that we do see, is the use of short sea, for example, out of Mexico to the East Coast and West Coast of the U.S. That is something that I think is occurring with more regularity because of a lot of issues, infrastructure issues, railcar supply issues. So that's an opportunity. Other than that, I think the core network is fairly well designed. As long as our distribution flow doesn't change and our factories stay where they are, we're in fairly good shape.
We've opened some railheads, and we're looking at a Southern California port.
So looking forward to our kind of 2030 vision, which is kind of a vision that starts in 2050 looking backwards and tries to figure out how do we get from here to 2030. We're reevaluating everything. There's tremendous downward pressure on pricing. R&D costs are still going to keep creeping up, so we got to put efficiency into the system or take costs out of the system as best we can. So we're looking internally at our own organization and trying to understand, first of all, benchmarking. We're doing some benchmarking with other OEs to understand, our structure is pretty sound internally, but it was a structure built over many years through crises. It's like a house that you added on to. It was, we started with the house because we had one kid, and then we had two more kids and whatever. So we've got these additions on the house that may or may not serve, it's serving us currently, but it may not serve us well to get from where we are to where we need to get to. Same with our logistics network. We're looking deeply at, and we've already made some change. We made changes last year in the rail network on the east. But we're looking at the entire network to understand, because a lot of the network that we have is built based on crises many years ago when we had emergency implementations to keep us running, and maybe that's not the most efficient way. So we're looking deeply at that. So we're trying to understand where there's other places we can really be more efficient. I really like the idea that someone brought up that we're, how do we partner more as OEs? I think all of our service providers already do that quite well. The rails do that. I think all of our haulaways do that quite well. But probably we could even be more strategic in that manner. But as far as our routing, we're bringing more in from Europe, as we're seeing in the East. We're bringing more in from Japan right now to sop up global capacity as demand is close to market top, we think. We don't want to build another factory without all the production in that factory being sold. So you'll see us sopping up bits of stranded capacity around the globe for the North American market, bringing it in. We'll probably be looking at some Panama Canal transits. We've been doing a lot of land bridging east to west and west to east. And I think in the state of ocean right now, we could probably save some money and probably not add too many days by going through the canal with some of our traffic. So we'll probably be seeing some of that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of interesting developments there. I mean, I know FCA recently started using Grace Harbor from Mexico, for example, right? And then using more ports in the Gulf, I think, as well, if I'm not mistaken.
We opened up Houston almost a year ago.
Yeah. So, there are obviously things changing, happening. I mean, just a few years ago, Honda would have been, 98% sourcing vehicles in North America. It's still a high level, I think, but obviously there's some shifts going back a little bit the other way with more imports too. So I think we've kind of been covering an interesting range here of looking quite forward, also a little bit more the medium term, some really good ideas from the audience. I appreciate that participation as well. Any other maybe last comments, points, questions for our panel before we go to break? Okay, so I mean, maybe just the last point from my side. What's maybe from your perspective as OEMs, what's one thing you'd like to see your service providers do, improve, invest in? I mean, is it a capacity issue, systems, whatever, and or even a mindset change or something? Maybe as a final message before we part.
I don't have nothing specific. I think we have a tremendous network of partners who do an incredible job for us. We're very lucky. We wouldn't be in the markets without the people in this room. With all the stuff, someone was talking about extended disruption, and we see the amplitude of disruptions and the frequency of them continuing to increase. And so, what we're trying to do internally and what we're asking our partners to do, which they're usually better at it than we are, is to be ready for that, right? It's a nimbleness of structure. It's a nimbleness of being able to react to things and being structured and organized in a way that you're ready for these disruptions. And I think this last set of storms was a great example of the readiness. I mean, we hardly skipped a beat, and it's because of all of our business partners who already are pretty darn nimble, but I think we're going to see more and more of the disruption, and whether it's in a weather or cross-border stuff or economic. So I think that's just be ready to be nimble.
Okay.
Work with us on technological improvements. When we have an idea, help us try it out, prove it out, and then hopefully over time will benefit both the OEMs and the service providers. The other thing is waste. There's always waste in our system, whether it's caused by the OEM or the carriers. It's a never-ending battle to identify that and then eliminate it.
We're good.
You're good.
Chris, I do have one more thing.
Please.
So Honda has one of our corporate initiatives is Blue Skies for Our Children. So we're measuring greenhouse gas emissions everywhere we go, from our factories to the vehicles that we produce to the logistics impact. And so increasingly, we're looking for our long-term partners to have a long-term plan to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in the part of the business that they operate. So we've seen that in truck away, we see it in ocean, we see it in rail. So that's probably on the long term as people are thinking about their future investments. I think society is demanding it of all of us anyway, and I think we're all doing it anyway. But we're reporting up to our board twice a year on it, and it's a big. Obviously, the supply chain is a big chunk of greenhouse gas emissions. That it shadows just about everything else we do. I mean, literally, our factories are among the cleanest places in the world now, where we don't have anything going to landfill. The next big chunk of reducing the pollution is in this area here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a very good point. And if those of you were in the voting yesterday, I think it measured out. It was, 70+% that sustainability, environmental reduction of emissions in the supply chain would be significant or very significant. So clearly, that is a key message, and one that I think will come from regulatory and consumer pressure as well. So very good point. I think that we'll end on there. I want to thank our panelists for a great discussion this morning. Just a couple of things before you go. Don't forget to vote on the session again. Just as you said, go onto the app and vote on how you found it and if you would recommend it. Superb. And then, yes, superb. And then whilst you're on the app, please do note there is also a feedback button. So if you go onto the menu, there's feedback, and there you can give us your feedback at the conference. Obviously, you're free to do that at the end after you've seen the rest. There's one panel left, and you won't want to miss it. But before you leave, or before the day is out at some point, please do give us that feedback. We also, if you don't want to do it on your phone because you don't like typing on small kind of things, we have some iPads out in the coffee area. So our staff will have the iPads, and I think at the reg desks as well. So you can also just fill it into the iPad when you go back and have some have lunch and things like that. Sorry, yeah, we'll have lunch. And on that sort of note, we now have lunch back where it was yesterday. It's hosted this afternoon by DHL. So thank you again, and we'll see you all back here in this room for the last panel of the day. Thanks again.